So to study the potential impact of wave breaking on a structure, engineers usually have formulas. So here we give the example of the Goddard 1966 formula. This function depends on the elevation at breaking. Actually, a portion of this elevation lambda is b, so it's the impact area of the wave. Also on the wave celerity, so the square of the wave celerity, which is actually an approximation of the orbital fluid velocity, and also the pi radius and water density. The important thing that we want to note here is the fact that to accurately estimate this function, engineers need to know accurately the shape of the wave and also its kinematic. In this context, there is still, as we saw in the first example at the beginning, a poor description of these energetic steep and breaking waves, so this led to the projectile. And another point is the lack of a proper methodology to estimate these energetic steep or breaking wave loads. This will be the subject of a project that will start next year, the impact. So the objectives of the project DIME are first to improve the extreme and breaking wave characterization for MRE systems, and also to contribute to MRE design standards, and my PhD is part of this project. So engineers have tools to estimate the wave shape and the wave velocity and the wave kinematics. So for example, with the linear wave theory, we can estimate the elevation, the horizontal fluid velocity, but it's limited because of the fact that the wave remains symmetric, and also it's limited to low amplitude wave, so it's not applicable to study wave breaking. A second tool is the stream function theory. With this, you can model strongly nonlinear waves, but it's limited due to the irrotational hypothesis. It's valid for flat bottom, and the wave remains symmetric and regular. And because this wave doesn't exist in reality, it's not possible to applicate it for realistic breaking wave study. And the last tool is based on the Navier-Stokes equation. With this type of model, you can have fully nonlinear wave representation, but it's limited because of the expensive computational time, so it's not applicable for MRE site characterization. So on this table, I summarized the three tools presented before. And here we will ask the question, is there any alternative? So because we had a collaboration in the context of the DIME project with the developer of a Boussinesq type model, we focused on this type of option. So in their original form, Boussinesq type equations are limited to shallow waters, to weakly nonlinear waves, and the one specificity of this model is that the equations are solved at mid-depths, so it will be called Z alpha in the following presentation. And also because wave can't overturn in such model, wave breaking need to be parameterized. So here we will use the model BOZ, standing for Boussinesq Ocean and Surf Zone Model. So the developer Volker Ruber actually extended the Boussinesq type equation so that in input of the model it remains valid up to h equal pi. His model has been widely validated in 1D, and the most important part for us is the fact that there have been 2D realistic configuration already existing. And the animation on the right is an illustration with this model. So regarding the 1D configuration, I've just mentioned that the model has been widely validated and against laboratory experiments. So regarding the integral parameters such as significant height, variance, and also the nonlinearity have been validated. As seen on this figure, here we represent the skewness and the asymmetry. So they are defined here. The skewness is when a symmetric wave becomes asymmetric in terms of the crest stroke, and when it's asymmetric, it's because of front-back asymmetry. So here we see the model Bose against the observation and another Boussinesq type model. And what we can see is that Bose fits very well the observation. So the observation are in black here. And this actually indirectly validated the wave breaking also. Regarding the 2D configuration, the integral wave parameters indirectly validated have been indirectly validated through the study of infragravity wave, run-up, and also setup. The example on the right represents typhoon that happened in Philippines in 2014. So this is actually a snapshot of a Bose simulation. And we can see above this line that the model is able to represent the run-up. So I mentioned in 1D that the nonlinearities in terms of the asymmetry here have been validated. So we want to check here if the Bose model is able to capture these wave nonlinearities in 2D coastal realistic conditions. And the most intense nonlinear process is wave breaking. Wave breaking occurs on the coastal and nearshore areas among other processes such as refraction, shoaling, diffraction, and also reflection. So wave breaking results from an instability that is caused by intense nonlinearities, and the widely accepted definition of the initiation of wave breaking is when the crest orbital fluid velocity, so you see here, overcomes the crest celerity, c. So when you c equals c, breaking starts. But to study wave breaking in a Boussinesq type model, we need a parameterization that actually requires first an initiation mechanism and also a dissipation mechanism. So this parameterization has been mainly studied through initiation criteria. So we have two main families, the geometric and the kinematic initiation criteria. But in the literature, they all require calibration. And it's also the fact with the Bose model. Bose model has two types of breaking initiation criteria. So one is based on the momentum gradient, and the other one is based on the Froude number. So the developer actually calibrated the threshold for the first one and also for the Froude number. And it's also important to note here that, for example, to compute the Froude number at the surface, we need to extrapolate the velocity that are solved at the depth z alpha, which is represented here. So the velocity needs to be extrapolated to the surface in order to compute this criterion. And here the problem is that, again, the initiation criterion require calibration, and here we would like to see if we can improve how wave breaking is captured in Bose through a more explicit and universal formulation of the wave breaking initiation criterion. So these are the two questions that I presented in the introduction, and they will be discussed in the following presentation. So let's start with the first one. Is the Bose model able to represent the wave nonlinearity in 2D coastal realistic conditions? So we studied a first site, which is actually a potential wave energy converter site. The area is presented here, so it's in Esquibien, in Brittany. Here is the bathymetry of the domain we selected. The input wave will be coming from this left boundary, here with a wave vector. And we had, through the EMACOP project, access to three data sets from a waveguide here and two pressure sensors just in front of a breakwater. So the animation on the right illustrates the simulation, a typical simulation that we did with the model. So we can see wave entering from the left boundary and propagating to the shore. figure on the left illustrates the significant wave height on the domain, along with the location of the observation of the in-situ observations. And we can see a strong variability among the domain. So when we compare the three observations that we have with the three corresponding locations in the model bus, we can obtain, for example, the spectrum here, the spectral density at the delta well on the left, and the two pressure sensors on the right. So the model is in blue, and the observations are in dashed line. And we can see here that the model doesn't fit really well the observation, and it's especially true for the non-linearities. So before answering the question regarding the non-linearities, we first have to answer another question. Is the Bose model able to represent the integral wave parameters in 2D coastal realistic conditions? So we studied another site. This site is more optimal for the model. It's located in the southwest of France, just in front, just around Biarritz Beach. We chose this area through a collaboration with another member of the project team. And we had access to a waveguide that was located offshore, so we used it as input of the model. And a typical output for winter wave condition is given here. So what we can see is a strong variability in the cross-shore and the longshore direction. So we have a few focusing areas, that's the red areas, and a few defocusing areas just in front, for example, a big one just in front of the beach. And we were really surprised by the variability between these defocusing areas and these focusing areas, so between 2 and almost 5 meters, only in 1 kilometer. So we thought we needed to check this with another model that are actually well validated in terms of their integral parameters. So we looked at the output of the spectral model. This type of model solved for the evolution of the spectrum in space and time. They are widely used for operational wave forecasting, and also the non-linearity of evolution with this model has been widely studied. An example is given on the right. We can see here how the SWAN model performed compared to observation, and we can see that it captures very well the generation of higher frequencies, but it failed with the lower frequencies. So when we compare the model SWAN with the model bus for exact same input conditions, so the same bathymetry and the same input spectrum, we have these results. We can see that these focusing and defocusing areas are located at the same location, but the intensity is really different. And also, I forgot to mention that these focusing and defocusing areas are caused by an intense refraction on the domain. So the strong variability in the longshore direction need to be validated somehow, because when we have such difference between the model SWAN and Bose, we need observation to validate this. But we need, in this case, to identify how we can validate this strong longshore variability captured by the wave model on a coastal scale. Because in situ would not be sufficient here to validate this. So this gave rise to a project that's called CoastWave Project. This project aimed at characterizing the coastal wave field from satellite data. So it's a partnership between Ocean Data Lab and France Energy Marine. And I was really lucky to work with the team of Ocean Data Lab, since I'm not a specialist of satellite data. So typically, the data they provide us is the imager. I'm sorry, the contrast is not that good. So this image represents the normalized radar cross-section that will be called sigma 0 in the following presentation. This is a snapshot of a specific instant. And we will try to identify how we can convert this variable to a variable so that we can compare it to the output of the model. So this is quite a long process, so the following is need to be described. So once we have the satellite data on the Biarritz area here, we check at the spatial spectrum, which is illustrated on the right. And what we see here is that there are two options. Since from an image we can estimate the direction, but we can't say if it's going this way or this way, so the two options are presented. The human can identify that the waves are coming this direction, so we will mainly look at this one here. And what we can also comment is the fact that it's quite a broad spectrum, but this is because it's a spatial spectrum, so we have both the short and long waves that are present in the domain, and we can also cover a large area of direction. But for the following of the methodology, we will filter the energy outside the white contour. So we end up with this output on the right after a spectral filtering of the spatial spectrum. And then we do the same with the output of the model buzz. So here we have a snapshot of the elevation. We can see waves propagating from offshore to the coast, and we can also see waves propagating in this direction. And actually, the wave in this direction, we can also see them in the spectrum. That's these tiny spots here and here. So we perform the exact same spectral filtering as we did with the satellites for all the time steps of the buzz simulation. So for a typical snapshot, I have this output. So you can see that we removed all the waves that are outside this range. So we removed the waves that are propagating in this long-short direction. And also we removed really short waves and long waves. So we do that for all the time steps of buzz simulation. So that's the animation on the right. And on the left is the snapshot of the satellites. So we will try to identify in the buzz simulation which time step fits best the image of the satellites. So to do that, we can't compare this sigma 0 value to the elevation because it do not represent the same information. We will make the hypothesis that when we compute the amplitude of both these variables and when we normalize them, we can compare them. So here is another animation of the computation of the amplitude in buzz. So for example, you can see this group, these wave groups here. Again, you can see it here in terms of the elevation. And it's important to note that in buzz, the phase of the wave are random, so the groups are random. That's why for all the time steps in buzz simulation, we will compute the correlation in each box here. We will compute the correlation between the satellite and buzz for all the time steps. And the maximum correlation that we could find is the example here. So it corresponds to two different time steps from the model buzz, one for each box. And when you see that, you can see that it doesn't fit very well between the satellite and buzz. And this is due to the really randomness of the wave phase in the model buzz. And even if we performed a 10-hour simulation in buzz, we couldn't find statistically a time step that fits quite well the satellite. And we actually calculated how long should be the buzz simulation to find a match at 95%, and it's 10 million years. So it's impossible to do so. So this method is not good, and we had to find another method to compare the satellite with the wave model. So these are the different steps of the second method. The problem with the first one is due to the groups that are random. So with the second method, we will try to get rid of this problem by averaging many satellite images. So for this, we need to collect satellite data. Then we had to classify them to identify which image we can average. And for that, we needed a site sensitivity analysis. And once we have this similar condition, we can identify different ensembles. We can also compute from these ensembles the corresponding input spectrum for the models. And then we will be able to compute the satellite with the output of the models. Here I want to note that with the SWAN model, the output is a significant wave height, so we won't be able to directly compare it to the output of the satellites. And we checked in the course of our work that we could compare the normalized filtered amplitude with the normalized significant wave height. So for the first step, it's the site sensitivity analysis. So here I will discuss a transect here, which is quite far from the coast, in approximately 15 meter depth in average. We identified a reference configuration, and it corresponds to typical winter conditions. And to simplify the method, we used monochromatic unidirectional waves. So what we see on this plot is the variation of the significant wave height along the transect, while we vary one input in the model. So we varied for the first plot the significant wave height, for the second one the wave period, then the peak direction, and the last one is the mean water level. So in the end, from this sensitivity analysis, we can see that the more sensitive parameter is the peak direction here. So for the following, we will say that we should not average satellite image that have a peak direction in a range more than 20 degrees. So once we collect all the satellite data, we can classify them in terms of, so each point is a satellite image. We can classify them in terms of the peak direction and the mean wavelength in the domain. From the site sensitivity analysis, we said that we should not average images that have a directional range of more than 20 degrees. And also it's a trade-off so that we have sufficient image to average. So we identified 3 ensembles here. And from that, we can compute the average map from the satellites. And also from the Anglet waveguide, we collected each corresponding, to each event we collected the spectrum, and we averaged this spectrum so that we can use it as input of the models. And the output here, for example, on the ensemble 3, is, for the first image, the sound filtered amplitude from the sigma 0 values, and on the right, the Bose filter amplitude from the elevation. So we can qualitatively see some similarities. So in front of Biarritz Beach, there is this defocusing pattern, which is quite well captured by Bose. And also we can see this focusing around it. And also we can see it here. Something else to say about that is the fact that with these groups, we had not sufficient images to get rid of the group's variability completely, so we can still see some variability offshore. And also, the input direction of this event is coming from the left corner, bottom left corner, so in that direction. So in the model, we end up with these shadow areas. So we will not discuss the difference between the two because it is due to numerical inputs. And so to check at the SWAN output, we compare the normalized significant wave height to the Bose normalized amplitude. We can see that SWAN models see much less intensity in terms of this focusing and defocusing pattern induced by refraction. And therefore, in this case, it's the Bose model that fits best the satellite image. So regarding this question, 1C, how can we validate the full Longshore variability with the wave captured by wave models on a coastal scale? We can say that we identified that SAR data may provide information to answer this question. And we developed a new innovative methodology. And in this particular case, the satellite qualitatively confirms the strong Longshore wave height gradients that are captured by Bose. But still, question 1A and 1B remains. So that's the question regarding the integral parameters and the nonlinearity validations. So we will jump to the second part. Even if we only qualitatively validated Bose, we can still study the wave breaking process, which is quite independent from the first study I did. So here we will discuss a potential universal formulation of the wave breaking initiation criterion. So in introduction, I already mentioned that there are different families of geometric breaking criteria. So here, the first well-known family are the geometric breaking criteria. So the parameter that can be used is the wave steepness, also the wave asymmetry, also the angle of the wavefront, as illustrated on the image here. And in the literature, this angle of the wavefront can vary between 14 and 32 degrees. This is due to the fact that it requires calibration and it's case specific. And regarding the second family of the kinematic breaking criteria, they result from the definition of wave breaking, that the UC over C equals 1. And from laboratory experiments, this ratio range between 0.7 and 1.3, and again, it's because of the case-specific configuration that require calibration of this criteria. But there is a last family, the dynamic breaking criteria, that are based on, for example, energy flux. A recent paper from Barthélémy et al. In 2018 triggered our attention because it defines a parameter that is, according to them, validated for intermediate and deep water. So it's the parameter B here. That depends on the fluid velocity, on pressure, the water depth, and also the phase celerity. And it's important for us because if you remind the one specificity of the Diffus-Ines model is the fact that the equations are solved in the water column called Z alpha. So in the following, we will try to identify if we can use this parameter B at this depth Z alpha. And in the meantime, this paper only validated B at the surface because it reduces to UC over C, so the kinematic criterion. And they found out that when B exceeds the value of 0.85, so that's what we can see on the figure on the right here. The black dots are the breaking wave, and the empty markers are the non-breaking waves. So there is a limit between the non-breaking and breaking case. And in the end of their paper, they suggest that since it's valid at the surface, it should be valid anywhere in the water column. And also because it doesn't depend on the water depth at the surface, it should be valid also in shallow waters. So we asked the question, could we use B at the alpha water depth for Boussinesq type models? So to do that, we needed a database of breaking waves, but the observations are quite rare. And so we used a fully nonlinear potential flow model in order to build this breaking wave database. And the interesting point is that they are based on fully nonlinear potential theory, and also it relies on the boundary elements method. This model solves wave breaking until touchdown of the breaker jets, and in our case, we will use the definition of initiation of breaking when there is a local vertical front slope. So that was just when we had the pause on the image. So the first configuration that we use are solitary wave breaking on slope beach. So we varied the slope of the beach, the initial wave height, and then we could classify the different wave into the subsimilarity parameter defined for solitary wave by Greely et al. 1997. And this parameter can also help us to classify the type of breaking. So, for example, we have on top a spilling breaking wave and on the bottom a pending breaking wave. A, B, C, and D are different time steps of the simulation. B being the instant of the initiation of breaking when there is a local vertical front slope. So when we compute B at the alpha, the formulation is here. We have this output for all the waves that were defined in the table before. We have on the left the variation of VZ alpha against time, and on the right at the initiation of breaking. The Barthélémy threshold 0.85 is illustrated in the dashed line, and we can see that none of the waves reach this value, reach this threshold. So even if we were able to identify a lower threshold, for example here, it would actually be crossed before the initiation of breaking, because the variation in time is not monotonous. So it seems that from this experiment, B is not valid at the alpha. So to this question, we can say no. We therefore can't use it for Boussinesq type model. So we wanted to know if it was because it's not valid in the water column or if it's not valid for the specific case of shallow waters. So we wanted to answer this question. Is B valid in shallow water at the surface? But we were in a competition with an Australian and American team, so we had to think of something else. We asked also this question: why is there such scatter in the kinematic breaking criterion UC/C in the literature? So just to remind that here, UC/C was varying between 0.7 and 1.3. So let's come back to this, the output with the solitary wave. So if we look closer at the horizontal crest velocity, free velocity in red here, we also looked at the location of the maximum free velocity, so that's the blue square. And we can see that this maximum free velocity fairly well follows the initiation of the instability that is then at the beginning of overturning. So in the following, we will check for the behavior of this maximum free velocity against the phase velocity and the conventional kinematic criterion UC/C. So again, for the same solitary wave configuration, we check in time the variation of UC over C and UM over C on the left. And on the right is the value at the initiation of breaking. So the Barthélémy threshold and the one limit in the two cases are represented. And what we can see is that in the two cases, the two definitions of the kinematic criterion are above the Barthélémy threshold. And what we can also see is that while with UM over C, the values are fairly close to 1, they range between a larger values from 0.85 up to a bit more than 1. We also tested another case, so in pseudo-regular wave on a submerged bar. So this allowed, so we varied the initial wave height and we fixed the wavelength. This allowed us to have non-breaking case and breaking case. And examples are here. So the first plot is the non-breaking event. So in this specific case, B times step represents the maximum elevation. And on the bottom, B times step is the breaking initiation. So when we check again at how varies UC over C and UM over C in time, on the left and at initiation of breaking on the right, we can see that there is a clear limit between the non-breaking and the breaking case. And this clear limit is even more obvious with UM over C than with UC over C. And also, for the breaking case, with UM over C, the range of values are fairly close to 1, while it varies between 0.85 and more than 1 with UC over C. So, as a reminder, to conclude this part, can we use B at Z alpha for business type model? The answer is no, because B is not valid at Z alpha. To the question, is B at the surface valid in shallow water? We can say that both UC over C and our new definition of the kinematic criterion UM over C are above 0.85 at breaking initiation, so they are both in agreement with Barthélémy's et al. Study. And also, we can answer to the other question regarding the scatter that is found in the literature. We can see here that when we use UM instead of UC, we capture better the identification of the field instability location, and this is mainly true for the cranking breaking waves. So when we don't use the good velocities for instead of UC, if we use UM, we reduce the scatter that is found in the literature. And also, because we used the initiation of breaking when there is a local vertical front slope, we can reconcile the front slope geometric criterion and the kinematic breaking criterion when we use UM over C equals 1. But the first question regarding how to improve the wave breaking in BOD remains, and this is discussed right now in the perspective. So with our new definition of the kinematic criterion UM over C, we improved our understanding of the breaking process, but still more configuration should be investigated with irregular waves, also in deep waters, in 3D with shock crested waves. And when we want to discuss the potential added value of this criterion, it's not that obvious for Boussinesq type model, because these models are numerically unstable just before the initiation of breaking. So instead of breaking onset criterion, they require an imminence criterion. And also, with Boussinesq type model, it's not possible to get UM. And so instead of using U(m)/c = 1, which is not directly applicable, it's likely that the local vertical front slope should be checked. And regarding the fully nonlinear potential models, as the one I used here, they are stable until the breaking onset. So for the particular case of this model, U(m)/c = 1 is applicable to, for example, activate dissipation mechanism, as it's sometimes required depending on the study. And also, when we use U(m)/c = 1, it allows to reach higher wave nonlinearity than the criterion of Barthelemy when U(c)/c = 0.85. So from our work regarding the wave characterization in coastal and nearshore waters, we identified that new observation means are required. So we checked at potential methodology of satellite remote sensing. Further work are required to improve this method, and this will likely be possible with more and more data that will be available through the Copernicus program. And also other options are possible with on-site remote sensing, and also probably in-situ instruments using arrays of pressure sensors, for example. And this will help to answer the question 1A and 1B regarding the validity of the model with the integral wave parameters and the nonlinearities. And since it's also a goal of the project DIME, we think of the possible contribution of this work to certification standards. The database I built with the fully nonlinear potential model is actually used by members of the project DIME in order to study the sensitivity to the model for the computation of the Godot's formulas, which is reminded here. And also, since we proved that U(m)/c = 1 at the initiation of breaking from our simulation, we can confirm that using CB here is a good approximation for this maximum fluid velocity at breaking onset. But since it's a very localized maximum, if you use it for the whole impact area, then it will induce loads of transmission. And in the end, usually the steps that are provided for numerical two-square DIME is this one. So spectral model provide the input for fully nonlinear potential model that are then used to, in the end, study the fluid structure interaction. But here, we would recommend to use a phase resolving model in between the two, since phase resolving model likely provide a better input for fully nonlinear potential model. For example, with extreme conditions, that would be a better model, and then it would provide better information for fluid structure interaction. And also, this work was done in the context of marine renewable energy applications, but other potential applications exist, as the one given here. So, more generally for nearshore infrastructure design, breaking is a major process when looking at the nearshore circulation or also the sediment transport, and also it's interesting for extreme water level study. Thank you.